When Assassin's Creed Unity launched in 2014, it was met with mixed reactions, and for good reason. The game was plagued by technical issues, from glitches and bugs to performance problems that frustrated players. The ambitious shift to a new generation also came with high expectations, and many felt the game didn't deliver. The story, centered around Arnaud Dorian during the French Revolution, was criticized for feeling underwhelming compared to previous entries. However, Unity began to shine for what it did right. The game's recreation of Paris is stunning, with its sprawling cityscape and iconic landmarks like Notre Dame, rendered in breathtaking detail. Patches and updates eventually fixed technical issues, allowing players to appreciate the game's strength. Today, Unity is remembered as a bold experiment that, despite its rocky start, laid the groundwork for future improvements in the series. Far Cry Primal was a game that divided fans from the start. Moving away from the series' usual formula of vehicles and modern warfare, it instead plunged players into the Stone Age, armed with spears and the ability to tame wild beasts. At launch, many criticized its world for feeling empty and repetitive. The story was seen as simpler compared to the more complex narratives of previous games. But as time went on, players began to appreciate the game's unique take on the Far Cry formula. The survival mechanics, like crafting tools and taming animals, added a fresh layer of depth that set it apart. The prehistoric setting, though divisive at first, offered a raw and immersive experience that grew on people. Over the years, Far Cry Primal started to win over its critics, with many praising its creativity and willingness to take risks. What was once seen as an odd spin-off is now remembered as a bold and memorable entry in the series. Prey is a game that had a rocky start. When it launched in 2017, many players found its slow opening hours and cryptic storytelling frustrating. The game's deliberate pacing and initial lack of direction left some feeling disoriented rather than engaged. Critics also pointed out that it took a while for the story and gameplay to fully reveal their potential, which didn't sit well with everyone. However, as players spent more time with it, opinions began to shift. The gameplay, which blends immersive sim elements with survival horror, became a highlight for many. While it may not have clicked with everyone at first, it's now remembered as a unique and ambitious title that took risks, and for many, those risks paid off. Dark Souls is a game that redefined what it means to challenge players. From the moment it launched, its punishing difficulty became a defining feature and a point of contention. For many, the steep learning curve, players accustomed to more forgiving games struggled to adapt, and some dismissed it as unnecessarily harsh. Yet, beneath its tough exterior, Dark Souls offered something truly special. A world built on fairness, mastery, and the thrill of overcoming seemingly impossible odds. As players pushed through the initial frustration, they began to uncover the game's brilliance. Its interconnected world rewarded exploration and careful planning. The combat, while demanding, was precise and satisfying, encouraging players to learn enemy patterns and refine their skills. The cryptic storytelling, told through item descriptions and environmental details, added layers of depth that sparked endless theories and discussions. Over time, Dark Souls transformed from a divisive release into a cultural phenomenon. It inspired a new genre of Souls-like games and became a benchmark for design, proving that difficulty, when done right, can be deeply rewarding. Mafia 3 arrived with high expectations, but its launch was met with mixed reactions. Players encountered bugs, performance problems, and a world that, while visually impressive, felt underutilized. The game's open-world design was seen by some as monotonous, lacking the variety and depth of its predecessors. However, as time passed, Mafia 3 began to find its audience. The story of Lincoln Clay resonated deeply with many players. The soundtrack, featuring iconic 60s music, and the atmospheric world-building also received widespread praise. Over time, patches addressed many of the technical issues, allowing players to appreciate the game's strength. What was once seen as a flawed entry in the Mafia series is now remembered for its storytelling and willingness to tackle difficult themes. Even games with rocky starts can leave a lasting impression. The Callisto Protocol arrived with enormous expectations, fueled by its comparisons to Dead Space and the involvement of industry veterans. However, the hype may have worked against it. At launch, many players felt the game didn't quite live up to the legacy of its spiritual predecessor, criticizing its linear design, lack of variety in gameplay, and technical issues on some platforms. The comparisons to Dead Space were inevitable, and for some, the Callisto Protocol fell short in delivering the same level of innovation and depth. But as time has passed, opinions have started to shift. Players have begun to appreciate the game for what it is, rather than what it was expected to be. Its atmospheric horror, gruesome combat, and stunning visuals have earned praise, with many noting its ability to create tension and deliver visceral, heart-pounding moments. The story, while not groundbreaking, offers a solid sci-fi horror experience with a focus on survival and desperation. What was once seen as a disappointment is now being re-evaluated as a solid entry in the survival horror genre. Days Gone had a rough start. When it launched, the game faced criticism for its technical issues, pacing problems, and a story that some felt took too long to get going. The open-world design, while ambitious, was seen by many as repetitive, with missions that didn't always feel fresh or engaging. Over time, players began to see the game in a new light. The story of Deacon St. John, a biker navigating a world overrun by freakers, started to resonate with many. The massive hordes of zombies became a defining element, offering some of the most intense and thrilling moments in gaming. The world itself, with its lush forests, abandoned towns, and eerie atmosphere, also won praise for its beauty and attention to detail. As patches fixed many of the technical issues, more players gave Days Gone a second chance, and found a game that was far better than its initial reception suggested. Days Gone is remembered not for its flaws, but for its ambition, heart, and the moments that made it unforgettable. Watch Dogs was a game that promised to revolutionize the open-world genre with its hacking mechanics and tech-driven narrative. However, its launch didn't quite meet the sky-high expectations set by its early trailers. Many players were disappointed by the visuals, which fell short of the stunning previews, and the story was criticized for feeling predictable. The hacking mechanics, though innovative, sometimes felt underutilized, with missions leaning toward repetition. Yet, as time went on, players began to see the game in a new light. The setting of Chicago created an immersive atmosphere that many grew to appreciate. Its protagonist, Aiden Pierce, with his brooding personality, has also gained a cult following, with many fans appreciating his complexity compared to later protagonists. Over time, Watch Dogs has been re-evaluated as a game that, for many, it remains the best entry in the series. It may not have been perfect, but it's a game that took risks, and those risks paid off in ways that still resonate today. Death Stranding is a game that defies easy categorization. From the moment it was announced, its enigmatic trailers and Hideo Kojima's reputation set expectations sky-high. But when it finally launched, the game's slow, deliberate gameplay left many players scratching their head. Critics and players alike debated whether it was a profound meditation on isolation and connection or simply a glorified walking simulator. The mechanics, which involved balancing packages, navigating harsh terrain, and avoiding spectral threats, were seen by some as tedious, while others found them oddly satisfying. Yet, as players delved deeper, the vast, hauntingly beautiful landscapes became more than just a backdrop, reflecting themes of loneliness, perseverance, and hope. Over time, Death Stranding has been re-evaluated as a bold, unconventional experience that challenges what a game can be. It's not for everyone, but for those who connect with its vision, it's nothing short of unforgettable. Lords of the Fallen arrived with the ambition of carving its own space in the Souls-like genre, but its initial reception was far from glowing. Critics and players alike pointed out its clunky combat, inconsistent difficulty, and lack of polish, which made it feel like a rough imitation of Dark Souls rather than a true competitor. The story, set in a dark fantasy world of gods and demons, was seen as generic, failing to leave a lasting impression. However, thanks to a series of updates and patches, the game underwent a significant transformation. The developers listened to feedback, refining the combat system to feel more responsive and balanced, These changes breathed new life into the game, making it more accessible and enjoyable. The world, once criticized for its lack of originality, began to shine through its improved visuals and atmospheric design. Lords of the Fallen has been re-evaluated as a game that, while flawed, laid important groundwork for the Souls-like genre. It's a reminder that even games with rocky starts can evolve into something worth celebrating, especially when developers commit to improving the experience. For many, it's now seen as a hidden gem that deserves a second look. When No Man's Sky launched in 2016, it became one of the most controversial releases in gaming history. Hyped as a revolutionary space exploration game with an almost infinite universe to discover, players criticized the lack of meaningful content, repetitive gameplay, and missing features that had been showcased in trailers. The backlash was swift and intense, with many calling it one of the biggest disappointments of the year. However, what happened next is nothing short of remarkable. Instead of abandoning the game, the developers at Hello Games committed to improving it through a series of free updates. Over the years, No Man's Sky has been transformed into a completely different experience. Features like base building, multiplayer, underwater exploration, and even VR support were added, turning the game into the expansive, immersive universe it was always meant to be. No Man's Sky is celebrated as one of the greatest comeback stories in gaming. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and listening to the community. What was once a symbol of broken promises is now a shining example of how a game can evolve and win back its audience. Cyberpunk 2077 was one of the most anticipated games of all time, but its launch became a cautionary tale. Plagued by technical issues, especially on consoles, the game was criticized for its bugs and missing features. Many players felt that the sprawling, neon-lit world of Night City didn't live up to the hype. The backlash was swift and severe, leading to refunds, apologies from the developers, and even temporary removal from the PlayStation Store. However, over the years, they released a series of updates and patches that addressed many of the game's issues, improving performance, fixing bugs, and adding new content. The release of the Phantom Liberty expansion and the 2.0 update marked a turning point, transforming Cyberpunk into the game it was always meant to be. Cyberpunk 2077 stands as one of the greatest comebacks in gaming history, proving that even the most troubled launches can be turned around with dedication and hard work.